Good evening, thank you for coming back and welcome to part 2 of 6 songs that rock the world. It's been a really hard one to choose, this one, because it's such an embarrassment of riches to choose from. But I think maybe we've got some more people out because there's a bit of Bowie here tonight. So, in the last episode we talked about the Voyager spacecraft going off and leaving the solar system, taking the sounds of Earth out into space. And I'd just like to start this one by recognising that we've now had the dawn of the space age. David Bowie sung his Space Odyssey, and people have walked on the moon, and we're in the 1970s. And I think the most significant thing about the space program was that we could look back, and this was the first view that we had of our own planet. And the first song we'd like to start with is Joni Mitchell. So a woman that you think of as probably associated with the 1960s, but innovating wonderfully into the 1970s. And this track has a bit of a conservational theme to it. I'd like to welcome again Alice Laing, who's going to sing for us tonight. If you give her a big round of applause, Joni Mitchell, as you can see, those of you that play guitar, I'm playing that with an open tuning, and she's one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived, and it's always worth saying that. Never a bad album, and we've got 2 of Joni Mitchell's albums down here, and of course moving on to the Fantastic Blue, and taking us into that singer-songwriter realm. And she continued to innovate and produce albums through the 1970s, even collaborating with fantastic jazz artists, Jaco Pastorius and others, to produce some really wonderful, groundbreaking records. And she uses almost 50 different tunings on her guitar. So anytime she felt like she wanted to change or do something a little bit different, she would tune the guitar differently and just strike off in a different way. She is also someone who considers herself an artist, and that's one of the themes that's going to run through the first part of the talk today. And she would paint her album covers. Quite often she would start off with a series of paintings and then turn those into songs. So art rock is a big theme of the early 1970s for us, which brings us to Bowie. So our theme of falling from Earth and the space alien, of course we've got Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. We've got someone here who is trained in the theatre, in theatre techniques, in mime, understands visual art mediums, and was perhaps encouraged, first of all, to go towards musical theatre. He was writing bits of musical theatre. But when he started lodging with Tony Visconti or hanging around at his house and staying over, he realised that there was a whole load of alternative music that was kicking off in the late 1960s. Later, when he went and visited the Velvet Underground, he thought, that's what I want to do. And the fashion and everything that he applied to all his different permutations was a huge inspiration for everything that came after that. If anybody else lived their life as an artwork, I would say probably David Bowie did, because he considered himself first a sculptor, a painter, a writer, and the music was just part of what he did. I'm going to dip back into him in a moment. In the 70s, of course, you've got this fashion thing blasting out into British subculture, both in London. You've got the London punks, and you've got the American punks as well. So you've got the New York scene. The New York scene's more arty and quite sophisticated, but some people have described the London scene as just kind of yobs, really. But in terms of the importance of the music and how music was going back to its rawness and its basic sounds, there's a really important reset and refresh. In the middle of the 1970s, you almost get that three chords and the truth thing that rock and roll had in our previous talk in the 1950s. It wasn't just in London, though, and we're going to play you a little bit of a song from the 1970s. Sorry, from the 1970s from Ireland. That's not working. It'll work. Back to the Stratocaster. Singing Teenage Kicks, John Peel's favourite song, reportedly. One of the things I love about that track is, the legend is that they got a bucket full of a very simple microphone, a little bit like this, the SM57, which is even more basic than this microphone in a way. And that's the only microphone they used to record the whole thing, drums, vocals, everything. And it's a great microphone, but it was breaking the idea that you needed lots of big, expensive equipment, that a garage band could go in and very simply record something that still sounds super and fresh today. Okay, so we're going to come back to David Bowie now. And in the mid-1970s, he recorded these three albums here, Low, Heroes and The Lodger. And these are often thought of as his Berlin trilogy, although he wasn't really in Berlin for all of it, but he considers them a bit of a trilogy and an exploration. And there's some really exciting things that happened during the recording of these three albums. This one started off in Paris, and then it was mixed in Berlin. And then Heroes was largely recorded and certainly mixed, and the vocals were at Hansa in Berlin. And then The Lodger, they'd been on a little bit of a tour, and they went into the nice mountain studios in Switzerland and recorded that. But still in Europe and still considering it part of the same kind of work. Bang, 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 coming out very, very quickly, all three of those. So one of the things that I think really represents where we're going with all the talk today and some of the equipment we're going to be experimenting with is this first album here. In this album, he's working with Tony Visconti as the producer we mentioned earlier, who's also been playing a bit of bass with him and so on. But he's working with somebody from Roxy Music that he sort of picked up along the way. So Roxy Music supported David Bowie at the Rainbow, but the keyboard player, Brian Eno from Roxy Music, was making some really incredible advances in sound, and he was making these early ambient albums, and that was where Bowie wanted to go. On this album, it's kind of a collaborative album. It's half David Bowie and half Brian Eno, and the second side of it is all kind of ambient tracks. And at this time, Brian Eno, all he had was this tiny little suitcase thing here. He's working on this little EMS synth, okay, which is sort of made by Boffin Summer in the UK, and it's monophonic, so that means you can only get one sound at a time. So he's getting one sound at a time on this, and then he would have to wind the tape back and then play the next note, and then wind it back and then hear it together, and then you start to build up a chord. So it's an incredibly time-consuming thing that he was trying to do with these kind of synths that they could get hold of. There were instruments that could play multiple notes and things and all the rest of it. And in fact, one of the things that some of the synthesizers could do at this time was arpeggiating sound. So you could get it to... So on Sound and Vision, on this track, David Bowie's also using a different technique here, because he's just going into the studio and they're trying out all sorts of stuff, they're trying out sounds, and they've got enough time to really experiment in the studio and just make things up as they go along. Brian Eno's doing things like putting chords on the wall, and they're pointing, saying, everybody try playing this chord, and everybody try playing that chord, and they're coming up with these interesting sounds. And there's nothing really super exciting about the music. There's not like great modulations and things like I could point out from last week. There's certainly some brilliant hooks. That's what we call these really exciting little bits of melody that bounce out at you. But they were just making these lovely soundscapes and doing interesting things. And as part of this, you've got the guitarist, you've got Robert Fripp, and Brian Eno is playing the guitar through the synth. So instead of just pressing the keys down on the synth, he's playing his guitar and he's manipulating it. We're going to hear that more on Heroes. On this one, Sound of Vision, you just hear that it's a beautiful visual picture. And he's even talking about my room's blue and it's a lovely colour. And he's talking about Sound of Vision. I think it's a really nice representation of how he was painting. He was painting just as much as he was recording music. And he would send all the musicians home, and for 3 months he'd sit down with Tony Visconti, and he would be writing lyrics and trying to craft that once the band had gone. So he'd got all these backing tracks, and then he was adding in a top line. Let's have a listen to Sound and Vision. This is our first one of our 4 tracks that rock the world. And I kind of think of that as a sonic painting. There's so many colours in it. And I love the way that it was crafted, just experimenting in the studio, getting different colours, and then going away and thinking about lyrics. I'm going to focus on thinking about the lyrics in our next song. We're just going to demonstrate halfway through the song. I've got somebody coming to help me, Josh. Would you like to come and help? Okay. So Josh is going to play a little bit of keyboards on this one for us. Okay. And we're going to... Oh, no. Go back. Okay. We're going to try a little bit of Heroes. Okay. Right, how's it sound? Okay. Thank you, Josh. So, we started towards the end of that song. I can remember standing by the wall, and I love the story of how Bowie came up with the lyrics, and I think it illustrates how he'd crafted this lovely thing with Robert Fripp playing the guitar through the synth and all the rest of it. But he's looking there out through the window of Hansa's studio, and he sees Tony Visconti and Tony Visconti's girlfriend standing by the Berlin Wall. You could literally see the Berlin Wall. And what David Bowie had been doing is he'd been interviewing people that had escaped over the wall during that time in the 70s, and people that got caught in the no man's land and the mines and all the rest of it. And he was painting their portraits. There's a new museum going to open in London, which is going to have, for the first time, these paintings exhibited. And there's some extraordinary portraits of all these different characters that had escaped over the Berlin Wall. So this must have been very much on his mind. And he's looking at them under the wall, and he's thinking of separation and people being together and the guns going off over their head. And in 1989, I had a chance to go to the Berlin Wall and hack bits of it off and get pulled off it by an East German guard and bribe some guards at Checkpoint Charlie to go through and look at some of the villages in Eastern Germany. And it was a huge, huge part of where people had come post-war, and a huge part of the 60s and the 70s and so on that they were living through. And he's going there to a new city, and he's experiencing and really getting under the skin of these people. And there's lots of different lyrics of freedom in this track, Heroes. But it's got a lovely texture to it from the synth guitar. I have to be careful here because I've got the Spanish version. So it's quite hard to get the right track. What's Spanish for side one? Right. So you can all see how close I get it to actually putting the right track on. It's all part of the anticipation. So you can hear a little bit of the previous track, or is he going to miss the first bar? And here we go. So a track that's got beautiful textures in, that's quite original, putting a guitar through a synthesizer and manipulating it. There's two people playing that guitar, the guitarist Robert Fripp and Brian Eno, manipulating it live to get those textures. But also, he's still using the same chords from the Velvet Underground. It's pretty much I'm Waiting for My Man, chord number 1, chord number 4. We were talking about that last week. But instead of talking about sort of drug deals in inner city New York, he's now talking about the Cold War. Going to just touch on this classic album. And in terms of wonderful LA sound and going and finding a studio, Mick Fleetwood went to find a studio that had the best sounding drums in the world. And Dave Grohl went on a pilgrimage there and got the desk before it, Sunset Sound, before it got taken away. Here he met Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, and they made these extraordinary albums, which kind of took up adult-orientated rock into a new realm in the 1970s. So there's this lovely, pristine American rock sound, or mid-Atlantic if you like, because it's a combination of British and American voices. So let's play a bit of Fleetwood Mac. Boom, there it was. Lost my little doodah, didn't I? Right, okay. So, meanwhile, we're going to start touching on the 1980s. An elaborate grove, a nice little record shop called Rough Trade set itself up in sort of Notting Hill area. And they had so many records left over from the 70s, and they started to put together different bits and pieces, and they said, why don't we start up a record label, okay? And they're also setting up something called the Cartel at this point. So in the early 1980s, they set up something that was a bit like an internet. They started ringing up all the independent record shops all around the UK. And they said, we're called Rough Trade, we can't get this record from the Buzzcocks up in Manchester. We can hear, you've made your own record, that's brilliant, but you can't get distribution because nobody is going to let you into Virgin. How about you send us down 100 copies, we'll sell them to the punks here, we'll send some up there to Manchester, and we'll send some down here. And started to make connections and put together all these different pieces across the UK. And so there was a producer called Martin Hannett, and he's also listening to things like drum machines and funk and stuff, and they're listening to David Bowie, and they're trying to get these sounds to work. And there's a band called Joy Division, and in the early 80s, they put together a kit synthesizer. And because they want to play the synthesizer, they need to teach Ian Curtis to play a song where he gets a 12-string guitar, a Vox 12-string guitar, and he can only play one chord. So they write a song for him that's only got one chord. He can play a D chord, and it sounds fantastic. Play this D chord. You have to put the kick drum on for me as well. I'll see if I can sort of do this. But it's almost like these guys, they're trying to put together music, but they're also trying to reference these kind of like drum machines that are starting to come out from a guy called Roger Lynn. We're going to look at that in a moment. But everybody wants to make a big sound, and so they're recording the drums very separate, sometimes put them out on the roof outside, and making a sound that sounds almost like it's been sequenced or put together by machines. Guitar, because the guitarist is busy playing the synthesizer and the drummer's trying to sound like a drum machine. Poor Ian Curtis is like concentrating, D chord, D chord, D chord, and then singing his song. But these guys and are putting together these sounds and trying to investigate new sounds in the studio. Meanwhile, you've got these guys here, and we've got the massive disco revolution. So back to the famous Strat. This guy's going to come back a lot. Nile Rodgers, very, very important producer. But this time he's playing in a band called Chic, and he's playing stuff like this. Okay, I thought we might sing along, but anyway, these really, really cool, infectious disco grooves are just incredibly popular because people can go out and dance, and you see people being free to dance on their own, you know, just girls going out on their own, men going out, men dancing with men, whatever. But these are designed to kind of free up, and the 1970s as well, there's a huge amount of hedonism and excess and all the rest of it. But what happens with disco is kind of the political message. The message that maybe we started with Joni, where she's saying, hey, let's look after our planet, comes to go, and it's like, freak out! Like this, okay. But in the US, there's 100% of the arts budget gets cut in the Bronx. And the kids there are incredibly musical, and they've got no instruments. So what do? They take their parents' records from the 60s and the 70s and stuff, and they start mixing them on turntables. And they found that if you get two records the same, you can mark them up with crayon. You can spin one, then spin the other, and you can keep the beat going, and then you can start singing over the top. And the Sugar Hill Gang, who were producing this early hip-hop, took Chic's records and completely lifted them and made, you do the hip-hop, hippity-hop and so on, and we've got our early hip-hop starting. There were wonderful musicians like Shah Rock, that's just been rediscovered, female hip-hop artist who sadly was fired because she became pregnant, and it's worth mentioning her. Go out and find out about her because she was the first female hip-hop artist to appear on television, and she was actually pregnant while she did the broadcast, and then afterwards the manager fired her and was completely written out of all the royalties. But there's an incredible tradition there. We're going to dip back into the hip-hop sound as well and how that feeds back into our main story. Okay, so we're fully into the 1980s. We've done Love Will Tear Us Apart in 1980. We've got the independent scene happening in Britain. We've got the American punks doing their thing. We've had disco. We've got hip-hop starting off. But we've also got the mainstream happening. And Roger Lynn was a guitarist who thought, well, I kind of want something to play along with. I want something, you know, so guitarists could play. And you know what, we're in a studio and, you know, the drummer never turns up and they're never in time and they're taking so long. Why don't I take my friend who's a drummer and I'll put him in my airing cupboard, seriously. And he was in the airing cupboard, so right, I'm going to put a microphone. You hit that snare drum, okay, and this is what it sounded like. Okay, turn that up a little bit, okay. I've tuned that down a bit, but here's the original. And this is a sample, an early sample of that sound. And he thought, well, that's that sound. And that snare drum you will hear on literally thousands and thousands of tracks, particularly from the 1980s. And here's the bass. And if I tune that snare back down, we get something like this. And there was somebody who played all their own tracks, had one of these. And that is the sound of this record in particular. Prince had a massive, massive hit in the middle of the 1980s, and of course MTV had come out as well. And MTV was a huge part of what was going on, because suddenly you had to make a decent video, and you had to be on TV, and you had to make it look cool and everything. So Prince, with his first album, he could go in, he could play the drums, and he could play the bass, and he'd think about it, and he'd play the keys, then he'd play like you know, saxophone, then he'd play some guitar, then he'd do a load of vocals, then he'd pitch it down, take the tape machine down, so he could sing the female vocals and do that. And that's pretty much what he did every single day of his life. And most of this record is just Prince. But he did also take a crack team of male and female musicians into his local club and brought an outside broadcast truck up and recorded some improvised songs, one of which was a 15-minute song about his dad, which was Purple Rain. And when the producer of the film they wanted to make saw that, he said, let's write the film about that. So there's some terrible acting on this film, but there's some amazing performances. The track I'd like to play from this is When Doves Cry, because it's just got a fantastic virtuosic musicianship from Prince. It's only got Prince playing on it, I think, as many of these tracks did. And he would just be there working and working away, okay? But it's also significant because Prince started to make tracks that didn't necessarily have bass in, because there was enough bass going on from the drum machines that we just talked about. So let's have a listen to When Doves Cry. Purpose, but it's being repurposed there, and it's being repurposed by many different people. Into the 1980s, oh, Susan Rogers. I always like to mention Susan Rogers because Prince's all-female teams were fantastic, and she's the engineer that captured the sound for Purple Rain and things from the truck and worked with Prince. And so I think she's worth pointing out as somebody that worked with Prince. I mean, nobody could produce Prince, he produced himself, but as an engineer. Into the 1980s, of course, we've started to get these things, and I was having a conversation with a very close friend yesterday about how these are coming back. You know, we've seen people dabbling with cassettes and stuff, and people are throwing away CDs, but they actually sound really good for some stuff. But if you imagine you're the Rolling Stones, and you've been selling all these wonderful records all through the 1960s, and suddenly your record label says, you know what, we're going to bring them all out on CD and tell everybody that we're going to throw away all your records, chuck those away, they don't sound any good. What you need to do is you need to suddenly go and buy a whole load of a new format. Suddenly, people are going to get incredibly, incredibly rich. And what happened in the 1980s was the music industry, the mainstream music industry, became huge and bloated and full of cash. And the musicians that were working in it started to gain a bit of a conscience and realise that they had a voice. Live Aid's the really obvious one, and with the slightly hastily written in hindsight song "Do They Know It's Christmas Time" was the start of that, and Geldof getting most of the world watching it. We're first getting something called a global village, where everybody is coming around the electronic hearth as Bob Geldof called it, the TV, and focusing in on musicians. And musicians have an incredible amount of power at this point, not only financially, but what they say and what they speak out is important. Although Live Aid did raise a lot of money, it was politically interesting. There was also an awful lot going on in America, and the big single in America was about Sun City, an artist saying, we're not going to play in South Africa in this resort where they were getting millions of pounds to play, because they're saying, well, this is under apartheid, and we're not going to go and support that regime. And just as that was coming in, the embargo, this was just sort of a loophole in the embargo, and they were closing it. And the guitarist from the E Street Band, Steve Van Zandt, had a real skill at going in and working politically in situations. And he went down to meet the militia in South Africa and met with both sides and said, can you just have a ceasefire, give me 6 months, and we're going to make some change. And he met with the team that was trying to get Nelson Mandela out. And at that time, Nelson Mandela was being drugged in prison, and they knew they had to get him out quickly, because otherwise when he came out, he would have been a vegetable. They were giving him drugs to sort of attack his mind. And the clock was ticking. And Steve Van Zandt tried a campaign. He said that he could go places that other politicians couldn't go. He'd previously been to Central America, been able to talk to one of the dictators there, and was able to encourage a change of regime even, and pass on things, and work outside of political systems. So the power of musicians at this point was huge. And Springsteen, although he didn't play at Live Aid, was always representing the blue-collar worker, representing the neglected and the abused and the refugee and the veteran from the Vietnam War, and criticising political systems. So we're going to do a Bruce Springsteen number. Yeah. And of course, Bruce Springsteen at this point is absolutely massive. He's having 7 hit singles from this album. Something I should point out is he's really a guy that's amazing in clubs. And he didn't start playing in stadiums until they invented the video screen. He was the first artist to use the video screen. And for somebody like Bruce Springsteen, you need this video screen because he needs that immediacy and connection, because he's all about being authentic. So I need to do the pedal. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
I come home in the morning, I go to bed feeling the same way. Ain't nothing but tired, man, I'm just tired and bored with myself. Hey there, baby, I could just use a little help. You can't start a fire, can't start a fire without a spark. This gun's for hire, even if we're just dancing in the dark. The message keeps getting clearer, radio's on, I'm moving round the place. Jam my look in the mirror, wanna change my clothes, my hair, my face. Man, I ain't getting nowhere, I'm just living in a dump like this. There's something happening somewhere, baby, I just know that there is. Can't start a fire, can't start a fire without a spark. This gun's for hire, even if we're dancing in the dark.
Yeah, and Bruce Springsteen, he was from an Irish, Italian background, and he lived on the beach when he was a teenager. He was homeless. He didn't have a bank account until he signed his first record deal. he really was from that working class kind of roots, and he's never really lost that, which is extraordinary for somebody who's been so mega successful. We're going to talk about a British artist now who was discovered busking in Trafalgar Square and made a huge impact in the late 80s because of course this was a time when the rich were getting richer and the poor were getting poorer, and a lot of musicians felt like, well, we're getting richer too, but how can we help? What can we say about it? And this voice came out in 1998. Okay. Oh, different key. You want it higher? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Fast car, I want a ticket to anywhere. Maybe we make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove. You got a fast car, I got a plan to get us out of here. I've been working at a convenience store. Managed to save just a little bit of money. Won't have to drive too far. Cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs. Finally see what it means to be living. My old man's got a problem. Live with a bottle, that's the way it is. He said his body's too old for working, but he's too young to look like his. His mama went off and left him. She wanted more from life than he could give. I said, somebody's got to take care of him. So I quit school and that's what I did. You got a fast car, but is it fast enough so we can fly away? You've gotta make a decision. Leave tonight, live and die this way. Driving in your car, speed so fast I felt like I was drunk. See the lights lay out before us, and my arm felt nice wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belonged. I had a feeling I could be someone, be someone, be someone. You got a fast car, go cruising to entertain ourselves, still ain't got a job. Look in the market as a checkout girl, I know things will get better. You will find work and I'll get promoted. Move out of the shelter, buy a bigger house and live in the suburbs. So I remember when we were driving in your car, speed so fast I felt like I was drunk. See the lights lay out before us, your arm felt nice right around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belonged. And I had a feeling I could be someone, be someone, be someone. You got a fast car, got a job that pays all our bills. Stay up drinking late at the bar. See more of your friends than you do your kids. I'd always hope for better. Maybe together we'll find it. No plans are going nowhere. Take your fast car and keep on driving. So I remember when we were driving in your car. Speed so fast I felt like I was drunk. See the lights laid out before us, and your arm felt nice right around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belonged. And I had a feeling I could be someone, be someone, be someone. You got a fast car, is it fast enough so we can fly away? Gotta make a decision. Leave tonight, live or die this way.
say, I know it's a long song, but I didn't want to take any words away from Tracy Chapman because there's a whole narrative and a story there, and it's great that she's become the first black artist to win the Country Music Award. Long time coming, really. Going to zip on to a little bit more technology now. So there's this different drum machine here, and this in the 1980s was a development that Roland came up with, and it's called the TR-808, and this is the other classic drum sound, this sound here. And this was used by an awful lot of hip-hop artists and across lots of different genres, but first of all hip-hop artists, because nobody really liked the sounds. They thought they were terrible, but there's certain things you can do with this that enable you to make a great sound, and I've actually got a little Roland drum pad here as well. If I turn this one on, we might be able to add this in. So you've got this kind of tune sound, which means you don't need anything else because that bass note is tuned, and you can tune it to the track, and you can even change the pitch, and you don't need a bass guitar or anything. Okay? I'm going to dip back to a very different band very, very quickly. Anybody know what this one is? Led Zeppelin. Okay, so we all like a bit of the Zeppelin, all right? And this track here is perhaps one of the most interesting drum tracks. And what people were doing at this time was they're looking for stuff. And as I say, they were going to Chic and all these kind of things. But this is one of the most famous drum tracks. John Bonham set up in a stately home, and the tower of the stately home, they put some microphones right up the top. I'm dying to do this here at Strode. We're going to do it in one of the stairwells, just waiting to get permission. We're going to set up and record that up the top. But this was the huge drum sound that they got. Oh no, I need to go back a bit, sorry. Here we go. No, this is it. Jewish boys from the Bronx who really loved hip hop, and they were like, yeah, let's sample John Bonham, you know, and put that in. There's so many Led Zeppelin samples in this, and you've got to fight for your right to party. So perhaps some crazy lads, but actually what they were doing with breaking up the rules, you know, nobody sampled John Bonham, nobody could take that, but they're putting it in, and Rick Rubin saying, yes, let's try it all, actually changed people's minds about what could happen. So that was licensed to ill. But when it comes to this album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, they would fight for your right, fight the power, fight the power. So that was Chuck D and Public Enemy. And there they were having a very important message, because in the 1980s, the black community really needed to spread the message and needed to get politicized, because the way that the policies of Reagan was treating their communities was kind of horrific. And we're still working out some of those problems now. So Rick Rubin was in there giving people a voice and allowing them to bring back a political message that we perhaps hadn't heard since the 1960s. And this was the new voice. And then, of course, he goes on to make lovely albums with Tom Petty, the American series with Johnny Cash, the Chili Peppers, Neil Young. Rick Rubin's beard, we talk about his beard quite a lot in class, because there's nothing like Rick Rubin's beard. And if you've not read his book, I would highly recommend reading that book. It is wonderful. Okay. Tracy Chapman. What I'm going to talk about, just to finish off with, is we're going to talk about the guitar. Okay. Now this is perhaps a bit of a strange choice, this one, for you two are not the most popular band in the world now, but the influence that this album had was significant because the stadium rock of the 1990s and into the noughties would not have happened. You wouldn't have had Coldplay and things without the sounds that U2 made. And the way they moved the guitar sounds on. Interestingly, the same innovator that developed the sounds on these took a punk band from Ireland and he crafted a new sound, adding in infinite guitar sounds, very much like the Robert Fripp stuff that he was doing for infinite sustain, and encouraging the Edge, the guitarist, to develop guitar sounds and textures and so on. Josh, do you want to come and give us a hand again? See if this is going to work. All right. So, there's this pedal here, which I'm going to turn on, and this kind of creates a repeat on the guitar. And the Edge is often said to be more of an engineer than a guitarist. I've scattered plectrums all over the shop here. But with this sound here, you can hear. Anthemic orchestral sound that the Edge is producing with these. And it wasn't particularly anything new, but just the Edge brought everything together. Michael Hedges and John Martin had been experimenting with delays and loops and all the rest of it, and many other people. But he kind of put it all together to make this big stadium sound that could fill huge stadiums. Okay. Interestingly, I haven't really done much theory, but the same 4-chord turnaround, it's basically the doo-wop sequence that we did from Be My Baby. You know, there's no difference. But interestingly, that last chord there, we go to a flattened 7th, that last C here, and I think it's just nice to get like, oh, we're going a little bit sideways here. There's a little bit of blues and rock under the hood still. Into Mixolydian mode, so there's a little bit of Led Zeppelin, there's a little bit of blues still in there, but it's also got like the doo-wop. Coldplay don't do the flat 7. All right, and I think with their next record, they went deeply into American music and soul music, working with B.B. King and so on. It's so unpopular to talk about U2 these days, but this was a massive record in the day, and a beautifully produced record. Next week we're going to be looking at some really quite exciting different bits of equipment. We're going fully digital. We'll be doing a little bit of sampling and things, but we're also going to be looking at the acoustic revival. So we're going to look at what it's like when you record in a woodshed with a single microphone, and also if you combine a crazy punk band with all the sampling, but also if you try and talk about really big things like life and death and why we're all here. So that's what I'm going to try and cover in the last session. But I'm going to leave you with Where the Streets Have No Name. Let's see if we can hear. Brian Eno producing this one. Stuck on the outside groove. I used to play this record too much when I was a kid. So we've got the Brian Eno synths that we started with. We've got the doo-wop 4-chord sequence. We've got the blues with the flattened seventh, and Irish punk. I should say Brian Eno got so fed up when he was recording this that the band had to physically restrain him from erasing the tapes. This particular track. Just couldn't get it to groove right. Apparently this week the bar is open, so we've managed to do that. But thanks for coming. Thank you very much. See you next week.